Continue tonight, inshallah, reciting a hadith from الشمائل المحمدية, Imam al-Tirmidhi. And inshallah, I'm choosing maybe one or two or a couple of hadith from every chapter. And some chapters I'm just kind of also skimming over. And we'll do this, inshallah, until we finish the book. There's a barakah in reciting these things about him, alayhi salatu wasalam, inshallah, learning more about the Prophet. And the chapter that I recited from yesterday, that I want to also continue today with another two hadith, is Bab ma ja'a fi sifati kalami Rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam of الشعر, what the Prophet alayhi salam said about poetry. And I have a point of doing that. And here's the hadith that I'm going to narrate for you today. قال حدثنا إسحاق بن منصور قال حدثنا عبد الرزاق قال حدثنا جعفر بن سليمان قال حدثنا ثابت عن أنس رضي الله عنه أن النبي صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم دخل مكة في عمرة القضاء وابن رواحة يمشي بين يديه وهو يقول. So the Prophet ﷺ entered Mecca during the Umrah that he did. Umrah al-Qada happened after the year of Hudaybiyah. So he went for Umrah on the year of Hudaybiyah. And of course the treaty of Hudaybiyah occurred because they did not allow him to perform Umrah. He signed the treaty and the agreement was he would come back next year and perform Umrah. So he came back next year, and next year the Umrah was called Umrah al-Qada, making up for the Umrah that he missed the year before. And so he entered Mecca in this Umrah, and Abdullah ibn Rawaha, the poet, is walking in front of him alayhi salatu wasalam. He's saying, خلوا بني الكفار عن سبيله اليوم نضربكم على تنزيله ضربا يزيل الهام عن مقيله ويذهل الخليل عن خليله. So you started reciting out poetry and magnifying the status of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, pointing out the betrayal of al-mushrikeen. And he's reciting this poetry. فقال له عمر رضي الله عنه. Sayyidina Umar al-Khattab is watching this, and he says, يا ابن رواحة بين يدي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم وفي حرم الله تقول شعرا. In front of the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام, and in the haram you're singing out poetry. To Sayyidina Umar, he thought this was inappropriate. Like Sayyidina Umar, his feeling that this was inappropriate and he shouldn't be doing this. So he was upset, and he told him, why are you in front of the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام? You should be reading the Quran, for example, or something. That's maybe what and it's haram, why are you saying poetry? فقال صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم خل عنه يا عمر فلا هي أسرع فيهم من نضح النبل. So the Prophet ﷺ would tell him, leave him, Ya Umar. Indeed, what he is saying is quicker to them than arrows, than a shower of arrows hitting them. This is worse. I mean, this is more harmful to them. This is reaching them more quicker and more effectively than if you had archers who were throwing arrows against them, at them. And that's how he understood it, alayhi salatu wasalam. He saw the value of media, and saw the value of art, and saw the value of speaking the tongue of the people who are being addressed. He saw the value in that, alayhi salatu wasalam. So he wasn't offended that they're in Mecca, they're walking this Umrah, he is there, alayhi salatu wasalam, and this guy is singing out poetry that he made up. It's not like poetry that was known, that was authentic or of some revelation of sort. No, it's something he made up. And Umar felt that way, as many people today may feel when an artistic venture is being put forward, or maybe Muslims are trying to reach others in an unorthodox manner. But the Prophet ﷺ didn't see a problem with it, and I think there is something there for us to learn. I'll recite this last one because this is one of my favorite hadith. I can't not say this one. قال حدثنا أحمد بن منيع قال حدثنا مروان بن معاوية عن عبد الله بن عبد الرحمن الطائفي عن عمرو بن الشريد عن أبيه رضي الله عنه قال كنت ردف النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. So this hadith is narrated in collection of Muslim عن الشريد. It's also narrated by Mu'adh bin Jabal. And the narration from Mu'adh is more authentic, but in the Shama'il he has this one. It's the same one, and I like it. He said, "Kuntu ridfa an-Nabi." He was sitting behind the Prophet ﷺ on a horse or a camel or a donkey or something. He was behind him. قال فأنشدته 100 قافية من قول أمية بن أبي الصلت. He said, I recited for him 100 verses of poetry from the poetry written by a man by the name of Umayyah ibn Abi Salt. He was a sha'ir jahili. He was a very wise poet. You can go and his poetry still lives today. So you could go and read what the Prophet ﷺ was asking to hear. كلما أنشدته بيتا قال لي النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم هيه. Every time I recite a verse of poetry, the Prophet ﷺ would say hee. Hee means another one, more. give me more. حتى أنشدته مئة, until I recited 100 verses of poetry. Well, 100 verses of poetry is a lot of poetry. It's a lot of poetry for Sharid to know. Aside from the Prophet ﷺ to listen to it, it's a lot for the guy to know. It's as if so this young Sahabi should be memorizing the Quran and should be learning fiqh, but he knows 100 verses of poetry of some guy who died before Islam and wasn't Muslim. And maybe he thought the Prophet ﷺ wouldn't want to know. He doesn't want the Prophet ﷺ to know this. But the Prophet ﷺ, not only did he ask him to recite some, he listened to 100 verses of poetry from him. He didn't tell him, why do you know all this, by the way? Why are you memorizing all of this? He didn't, because there's nothing wrong with it. Because this is a way, because gaining knowledge and being a part of the culture that you are living within and being aware of it, there's nothing wrong with that. And we have to learn these nuggets from him alayhi salatu wasalam if we hope for our community to do a little bit better. فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إن كاد ليسلم. He said he was so close to accepting Islam himself. Like Umayyah ibn Abi Salt, if you read his poetry, he was a very wise man. And a lot of his poetry contains within it the acceptance of death and the acceptance of good, the idea of good deeds and being a good person. But he never verbalized in his poetry the concept of tawheed. But the Prophet is listening to him and saying, "In kada la yuslim." He almost gave shahadat tawheed on his own, just in his own poetry. But I don't find it in what he's saying. Some scholars actually say that he did, that Umayyah ibn Abi Salt is one of that he did die a muwahhid eventually. But the Prophet ﷺ is listening to his shi'r and he didn't hear it. He didn't hear it, but he's like so close to it. So he appreciated someone who wasn't Muslim. He appreciated someone not Muslim. His poetry and saying, he almost figured it out himself. And that to me, that tells me a lot about how he saw how he saw literature and that artistic, creative aspect of the human experience, and I think it's something worthy of sharing with you. I hope that was a benefit to you. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. جزاكم الله خير وبارك الله فيكم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله